Hello and welcome to all of our good viewers who are here with us today. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and one of the MCs here at Gold. And here at Gold, let me tell you, it's very exciting. We're getting ready for our first live event for 2026, our Gold Winter Learning Day. And with me here is Kathryn Stagg. Welcome back, Kathryn.
Hello, nice to be here.
Nice to have you back. Kathryn has been with Gold before. We just talked a little bit earlier about the presentations you had with us. This one here is for the Gold Winter Learning Day, kicking off a new year of learning. And your presentation is titled Counseling When There's Not Much Lactation in Their Lactation Consultation. Goodness, that's quite the title. And I'm really excited about this, want to find out more. But first, tell our audience a little bit about you, where in the world you are, and a little bit about your background.
Yep, so I am in the UK. I live on the sort of northwest edge of London in Harrow. Grew up down in Devon, though, by the sea, which was lovely. But moved up when I was in my about 18 or so, something like that, when I went to university. So I've got four boys. I've got twins who are 20 and then a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I came to breastfeeding sport because I'm a musician and teacher by trade, so completely, not a healthcare professional. And so came via the breastfeeding counselling routes very much so. So I got some really good support when I was breastfeeding my twins and was given the chance to train as a peer supporter and thought that'd be a nice thing to do. And then I just basically completely, fell in love with supporting parents and wanted to learn more and found it all fascinating. And so I did my breastfeeding counselor training and then took my IBCLC exam. And I think I qualified 2018, beginning of 2018. I was allowed to practice. So that's when it happened. So yeah. So it's been a few years now. I've had to do one lot of recertifying, another one coming up in a couple of years' time. So yeah, and I just run a small private practice here in Northwest London, and I also have a charity helping support breastfeeding twin and triplet parents. So that
Beautiful.
takes up quite a bit of my time as well.
I can imagine. And you're quite the expert in that. Number one, you had your own twins, breastfed your
Yep.
own twins, and you also wrote a book about it, right, Kathryn?
Oh
You are
yes.
an author as well. So you're the expert on that. One thing I feel like you are very good at is your counseling skills, right? And
Mhm.
teaching, not only your counseling skills, but teaching about counseling skills and counseling. Your topic this time is counseling when there is not much lactation in their lactation consultation. And as care providers in the medical field, often we're trained to identify and fix mechanical issues, right? What's going on
Yep.
here with feeding, boom, boom, boom. But you are t looking at this from a slightly different angle this time around. Tell me a little bit about it and what prompted you to focus on this slightly different angle.
So I think because I come from a breastfeeding counsellor background and I've done a lot of phone support over the years. So I volunteered for the National Breastfeeding Helpline here in the UK. And so we had to do a lot of phone support. And, a lot of the time we're holding space for people. That it's the first time they've actually spoken to someone who sort of vaguely understands where they're coming from. And, so we had some training in that. And for me, it's one of the most important aspects of our job actually is a lot of the time, yes, there are things to fix and there are things that you can improve on, but there's also quite a lot of adjusting to becoming a mother and adjusting to, maybe the birth that they had or the situation that they're in or all this, sort of stuff. There's a lot of other things going on as well as the actual getting a good latch and making sure their milk production's, as good as it can be. And the reason why I did this presentation is basically because I had some consultations, which I'm going to tell you about in this presentation, where it was very much like not about the lactation. In fact, one of the consultations, I barely even saw the baby feed. Um, they sort of a little bit, but it wasn't really the main emphasis at all of the consultation. It was very much about unpacking all the other stuff that had come, around with alongside feeding, basically.
Yeah, you're so right about unpacking the other stuff. You brought up a really important point. Yes, it's, but, focusing on what is there to fix, and we're very quick to jump into those kind of things. However, we can't forget about, as you mentioned, circumstances. What kind of birth was there? Was there trauma? Also, to be realistic, many of our families, the families we work with, may have never held a baby before, right, Kathryn? I
Mhm.
mean, like there's many who
Absolutely.
maybe never held an a baby, and their baby is the first one, and they are not prepared at all for, about what it means, like being up every 2 hours breastfeeding, or life with an infant, because they've never seen it, or in their immediate family or such. So all of that is quite something that is besides the breastfeeding, but directly impacts breastfeeding. And
Absolutely.
some of that, if you think of, like, as practitioners, we always want to, fix things, right? But so what would you say to practitioners who feel like not doing enough, right? You mentioned, like, you barely saw that in that one case study you will tell us about in the presentation. You barely saw that infant feed. And many of us go like, oh, I feel like what if I'm not doing enough? What if I'm not offering concrete steps? What do you say to these providers or us, if we're fearful of feeling when we have to, but we have to do something, we're not doing enough, and, yeah, how do we tackle that?
So do you want to just redo that bit because my son just walked through and he didn't even notice.
It's okay. I'll be able to edit that out. So just
She
start
will be
from the
able
top.
to edit
Yeah,
that
just
out.
start.
I'll just go from there and he didn't
Okay.
even notice. Right, I'll just go from there and answer your question.
Just give me like a
Uh,
three. Just give me like a three count,
yeah,
Kathryn.
I think one of the main things that we can do is remember that saying that it's not what you said, it's how you made them feel. That's such an important saying to remember. And so some of my feedback that I've had from clients, and it's sometimes been a very, very straightforward consultation. There wasn't actually really much going on in the consultation, but they have found it incredibly useful and have responded to me maybe a few weeks down the line or a few months down the line going, oh, this was just the most wonderful thing and thank you so much, and you worked miracles and everything worked really, really well. And I'm like, didn't actually really do anything other than hold space, which I think, and actually listen and empathize and just make them feel okay about the fact that
Hmm.
they have all these worries and all this is going on. So it's yeah, I think that's the main thing to remember. So, and
Yeah,
we often can't do everything in one consultation. So
that's right.
ideally
Mm.
you get a follow-up if possible, but sometimes that doesn't happen either. But you cannot actually always, support every
Yeah.
single thing. And sometimes it's not appropriate to do that. And so one of the cases particularly that I talk about here, it's that if I had gone down that route, I think it would have been very overwhelming and
Hmm.
probably they would not have taken the information in and it may not have been that useful actually. So
Yeah.
thankfully she had a second consultation where we actually dealt with all that stuff.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, so I think that's the way to think about it.
That's a great way to think about it. And I love what you mentioned about case studies. Yes, there will be case studies in your presentation. And I always thought case studies are such a great vehicle for learning, because you feel like you're really part
Yeah.
of this. These are actual cases, and you give also the viewers an opportunity to chime in and see what they would do in these kind of situations as well, right? And you mentioned listening and holding space. What advice would you briefly give to consultants who feel like maybe uncomfortable when it comes to listening to these heavy topics because they feel unprepared? They're saying, like, I'm not a counselor. How should I respond to this? I feel like this is emotionally heavy, but I'm here to help them breastfeed. What pretty little tip can you give us here for that?
I think it's just you know uh, all we can do. A lot of this stuff is sometimes out of our remit as a lactation
Hmm.
professional. It's not actually what we are supporting with. They may need, some referrals through to mental health teams and such like, or, all sorts of other things that might be necessary. But that act of just listening and making them feel like you're actually, you care and that actually, you're supporting them just helps massively for those parents. And so, I think, we can do an awful lot without actually having to advise or anything like that. Just
Hmm.
that allowing them to just kind of offload everything. Quite often that is actually the most important thing that they need, and they just need to kind of talk it all through. And actually, the act of talking it through makes them help make a bit more sense about what happened as well, and how it's impacted things and such like. So, and the other thing is to then have somebody that you can call afterwards and go, oh my goodness, that was really tricky. Can I chat with you
Debrief.
through it and have a
Indeed.
debrief? Yes,
Yeah.
right. So,
Yeah.
I think having somebody that you could then talk it through yourself as well,
Yeah.
especially if it's an upsetting topic,
That's
if it's something
that.
that's
I love that suggestion because we also need to take care of ourselves too,
yeah.
because we are sitting there later on with that information, and a debrief is a good thing. So, a last question here for you, Kathryn, before I let you go. What are you hoping our viewers will able to take away with them from your presentation?
I'm hoping that they'll learn some skills first of all, or just, hopefully people will have already learned these, but it will just kind of help to sort of set what they're doing and things that they can think about. And just knowing that sometimes, you go into a situation, a consultation, and you don't actually know what you're going to get quite sometimes, and it can often go in a completely different way than what you're expecting, and that's okay. So, and then yeah, just some. It's just I think the examples that I have in the presentation hopefully will be good. That they're fairly varied in the three different ones that I talk about, and just to show sort of some different ways that you can approach certain topics, and ways of helping these parents who are struggling a bit.
Practical tips. I like it. Something we can take into our practice right away. Thank you so much, Kathryn. It has been such a pleasure having you back here at Gold, and I can't wait for your presentation.
Lovely to be here. Really looking forward to it.
And now some information for our viewers. This presentation is part of 3 presentations on January 20th. Will be live. Of course, all the presentations will be recorded as well. So if you don't know yet where you will be on January 20th, or if know you have to work that day, or you are in a different time zone, we invite you to go to goldlearning.com. There you'll find all the information about this wonderful lecture pack. And we hope to see you all in January. So I wish you a lovely rest of the year and happy holidays. And we'll see you then in January, everyone. Bye bye.